evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, and good evening to you. Welcome to WeatherBrains episode number 709. This is the pre-show, magical time of the program where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we occasionally say some outrageous things. This is James, and it's just me, and it's just you right now. The show actually begins in 16 and a half minutes from now. So that's the part of the show that is produced as an audio podcast. This is the marvelous time where we get the regulars and our guests on and typically say some crazy stuff here. So we're doing this on the 19th of August. And we've had some pretty hefty storms in my part of the world today, summer storms for some people. So, but we're live, so let's see if we can make this puppy fly. A lightning alert has been issued for Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And I just put that out on the Twitter. Again, for those of you that have been watching us for a long time, maybe you've missed the last couple of episodes, Google Hangouts over the air went away. And the platform ended August 1st, so we moved over to a video platform called Zoom. For our audio listeners, it makes no difference. But we're going to bring everybody on here. So let's invite everybody. So a little different procedure. If you were with us the first night we did this, it was an interesting night. I was actually home. Now, I'm at the TV station where I work now. But I was home, and thank goodness it took us a little while to figure it out. But by golly, we made it happen. And we have figured it out. So we are in the process of inviting our guests and our regulars at this point, which is what I'm in the process of doing right now. There's John Scala, Dr. John. We got Kevin. Got to have Kevin. Maybe Kevin will be on the show tonight. And for those that don't know, a lot of us are working our jobs, the real jobs we have while we do the show. So we can have to kind of bounce back and forth. This is a break for some of us between our early evening and the late evening newscasts. So, and Kevin and Aubrey and I fall in that category. Let's get Mr. Troy Kimmel from Austin, Tejas on here. And let's see, who else are we missing? We got to get Dr. Kim Cloco McLean on the show. So, okay, we have invited everybody. So just like magic, they should show up here in just a few minutes. Selfish personal plug. I have published a book, and again, our folks here were very kind to have me talk about that a few weeks ago. But if you happen to be in Alabama, the book signing this Saturday is in Cullman, one of the towns hit hard April 27th, 2011. But we are going to be in Cullman Saturday at Karma's Coffee House on First Avenue Northeast, downtown Cullman. And guess what else Saturday is in Cullman? Saturday in Cullman, it is the day of it is Possum Day. It is Cullman's version of Groundhog Day. They don't have Groundhog Day. They have Possum Day this Saturday. So what's going to happen? They have a possum that's going to come out at sunset. And if the possum feels a breeze, then fall will come early. And if the possum does not feel a breeze, we're going to have 6 more weeks of summer where we are. He will also predict this year's Iron Bowl winner, which for those that don't know is the Alabama-Auburn college football game. And also they will have a Possum Queen beauty pageant that evening. So also a Mouth of the South eating competition. So it's going to be a big day at Possum Day in Cullman. So I will be there early at the bookstore from 10 until 1. Bill, have you ever been to Possum Day in Cullman?
No, but will they have possum on the half shell?
I bet you they just might.
Are there any armadillos in Coleman County?
They have musical guests. Julie Ann and Gold Rush, Cotton Pickin' Kids, and Hunter London.
Wow.
Other guests include Billy Hulsey, Alabama's foremost Bigfoot expert.
Oh my goodness. I've been waiting to meet that guy.
So here you go. I'm excited about this Mouth of the South eating competition.
Are you in it?
No. They have a country strong champion. This is a timed obstacle course with hay bales, bags of feed, and tractor tires.
Are the bags of feed to feed the people that are in the course?
I guess we'll find out.
Well, I hear we're going to get you for 2 hours in Huntsville, so that's good.
Yeah, I'm under all these time constraints all of a sudden. These book deals, we do 3 hours every Saturday.
Well, you're only going to get 2 here, James. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And
we can't. We're just going to get rid of all your speaking and stage stuff and just let you do that instead.
Yeah, I hate that. It's just that stinking football game killed it.
Maybe they'll have a giant. Maybe we'll. No, that wouldn't be a good idea. I was going to say maybe we'll have like a high risk of severe weather. I'll have to cancel it. But then that would probably cancel the weather readiness too.
Well, watch us have a big hurricane coming right up the Central Gulf, which you never know.
Yeah, let's don't do it. Doesn't look like it right now for sure. I guess we can actually begin to see almost out that far.
Yeah, and I've got to be right back Sunday morning because I'm speaking at like 8:30 or something. They got me in a very early slot Sunday morning.
So you didn't talk anybody into a helicopter or anything to carry you back and forth?
That ain't happening. But nobody will be at that thing because all these TV guys go to the Hooters 50-cent beer night, so they'll show up down there about 10 o'clock. But I think I'm speaking at 8:30, and then Monday morning. That's why they put
you at 8:30.
Then I've got like another early one Monday morning, a mentor panel or something like that. Not quite sure what. I do. Yeah, I've been talking with my former intern that's going to be on it with me. That they pair you up with a former intern. I got a note today from the NWA about it, so that's Monday morning. But they got me with the early times, which I don't care. That's look, me, I don't sleep, so doesn't bother me at all.
Well, we've got a student assigned to you, and then they'll continue after you leave.
Okay.
To hand out books that you signed, so sign a bunch of them. And that'll be fun.
Okay. Yeah, the main thing, we just don't need a hurricane.
There's not going to be a hurricane. I can write that.
No, it'll be after that.
Greg Stumpf promised there would not be a hurricane.
Is Greg on? Oh, yeah, Greg is on here. Hey, Greg, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Great.
See, this I'm convinced, Bill, this is easier than Google Hangouts. At first, I was
No, there's no question, James. There is no comparison. And last night, Willie Dry, we did a test hangout for his show coming up on Labor Day. And he said, Bill, this is light years better than Google Hangout. So I think
the video quality is better. It's easier to get on.
So take that, Google.
and we could do the Brady Bunch look here, which is always a favorite. And I'm doing Storm Front Freaks Thursday night, and they are using the one that I was going to use, StreamYard, Yardstream.
Yeah.
And remember, the problem for us, you were limited to 6 people, and that doesn't work for, we got 6 of our own here, and then you bring in the guests. We needed more than 6. So Phil and the guys with Stormfront Freaks, they're doing that platform. So I'm doing their show Thursday evening, so we'll see how that works out. But I think this is great. I mean, after that, remember the first night we tried it, it took everybody a little getting used to, and had to get the right browser and get the right audio setting and video setting. But I think we're good here. This It's good.
Yeah, as long as you say, as long as you check the box, you're doing a video, which you have to do one or the other. As long as you don't miss that box that says, use the computer's audio, you're just fine.
Yeah. Let me get us over on live.bigbrainsmedia.com for the TV guys, and we are there. That's the only thing I needed to do, and I do think we're good.
We're gonna have to back up the pre-show to like 8:25 now.
Yeah, it's like for those that had not watched before, when we used Google Hangouts, it was just inconsistent. It was very inconsistent, and sometimes we'd get people on kind of quick, and then other times it'd take us 30 minutes to get people on, and they wouldn't get the invitation, and they got the invitation and they couldn't get on. So there'd be days it'd take us 30 minutes just to get everybody on here, but this has been much, much more efficient. So I am pleased with what did I spend on? I don't even know what I spent on this thing. I think it's $15 a month.
Yeah.
It's worth it. And we've got the embed code is good. And again, for those that don't know, this is aired on local television, on cable channels and over the air in my market. And so that's the reason we have to start at 30 minutes after the hour, and we have to have some things kind of done for the TV side. But anyway.
And there's a Delta sensor watching us tonight too, right, Matt? No, Matt wasn't listening. Yeah, there's a Delta sensor watching us tonight to make sure you don't say anything inappropriate, James.
Yeah, watch it, James.
Or corner me.
Oh, boy.
There's an eject button, Matt, right there in the lower right corner. It does not have a parachute. You have to bring your own parachute. Greg, what's your current title, my man? Are you like president of SIMS yet?
No, I am senior research associate at SIMS.
I think what we'll do is probably talk to you first, Greg, and go over everything. If you want to stay for the rest of the show, it's going to be a fun show tonight with Matt Tanner from Delta Airlines there. But if you need to run, you're welcome to do that. Dude.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
And we're not going to have you at Weather Ready Fest, right, Greg? I've already asked you that 1,000 times.
No, it's my daughter's a freshman now at Oklahoma State, and it's Dad's weekend. So
there you go.
Priority.
I knew I had asked you, but you never know.
So we got a note from Aubrey that said she had a what was Dancing with the Stars?
Did y'all know she's doing that?
Then something blew away or something. I didn't understand.
Was a shit.
Did that mean she had to interrupt Dancing with the Stars on television?
No, she's actually performing in the local one like you did.
She's performing. Okay.
Like Ginger.
Do we have any tape of that, Bill, anywhere?
Not yet. She's in the practice stage.
No. I'm talking about James.
Oh.
I want to see that. I want it.
No, those tapes were all burned.
Oh, boys, it's actually on YouTube.
Oh, there you go.
I have never done a screen share on this thing. So while we've got 3 minutes here, let me see. I have.
Mic check. 1, 2, 3.
Loud and clear, right?
Loud and clear.
Camry.
It works when I'm in test mode, but it doesn't seem to work now. Okay, now it seems to work. Okay, fine.
All right, we need one more person. We'll have the Brady Bunch.
So in theory,
yeah, we see it, James.
Let's see if I can.
Suspenders.
Well, duh. I mean, who are we talking about here?
It's like really embarrassing.
Is that you doing all those moves, Span?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! So you take Karen dancing like that?
This is like really embarrassing.
Oh my goodness!
Look at James and his moves.
That lady's flapping her tail feathers at you.
Yeah. This air in Alabama?
Wow.
All right.
It was on the Fox channel.
I didn't think they were allowed to do that in Alabama.
Wow. Doing some dirty dancing.
They allowed that in Alabama.
Yeah.
Dirty dancing. That was embarrassing. Boy,
You showed it.
breaking out a cold sweat now. So, All right. So the one thing I had to be sure we got that finished by the time the TV hit here at 30 after the hour, because I do not want that to go on local television.
Okay.
Oh, come on now.
Hey, Bill, I have it standing by on my computer. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make James come to Austin.
There you go.
90 seconds out, and we'll get this sucker started here. But this is so easy. I mean, why didn't we do this like years ago? I never knew about it. After fighting with that Google Hangout thing, man, this is just
that
like
was a fight.
Weird. I tell you, it was job security, but it was the biggest frustration every week.
Yeah. No, goodness. So this is awesome, and we've not had one problem with it. After that first night where we learned the platform, we're okay, and then really all of our guests they have done. They sounded great. They've looked great. So it's all good.
I think it's better picture quality, right?
Yeah, I do.
I think so.
I mean, from my perspective, and I've watched a little bit of the replay. I mean, mainly I listen. Well, for those that don't know what I do, I'm so distracted often because I'm working. I like to listen to the show while I'm driving to schools every week, and I hear things I didn't hear during the live version. And I do think the audio quality is better for sure. As I listen and watching some of the video replays, I think the video quality is better too. So we have,
except when certain people crank up their audio, the bass, and drown out everybody else after that first week. We know about you and sound quality, James. I gotta start the recorders.
Yeah.
All right. Good evening. Welcome to our television viewers here. Thank you for watching. We're about to start WeatherBrains here. It's Monday night. It's 8:30 Central Time, 9:30 Eastern. So we are going to crank up the audio tracks and start the show on time. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's WeatherBrains. This is the weekly show all about weather. This is for the 19th of August, 2019, and this is episode number 709. 709. It's the only thing about this new platform. I don't see the show number on this, but 709 is the show. Look who's here. Nate Johnson. Nate is actually home this evening.
Yes, that's not going to last very long. I'll be in Greg's neck of the woods starting tomorrow for the same thing that Greg is going to be there for. Of course, he lives there, so it's different.
For work.
Right.
Nate, give us
Kim too. Woohoo!
Mm-hmm.
I hope.
Yes, he will.
Nate, give us North Carolina State preview, football preview. What you got this year?
I think we're going to surprise a couple of people. We'll go better than 500. I think we'll get in another bowl game. Bit of a rebuilding year, new quarterback. We've had 7 or 8 years of the quarterback really not being in question, and we've got 2 guys that I think are pretty decent. I think we'll do okay. The bigger issue is how many games will be delayed or canceled due to weather. My on that is 0. We'll play the odds there, but I get paid either way, so it's all good.
Okay, awesome. So we might as well do a football preview. Troy, how about UT and Texas A&M? Give us a preview.
Yeah, there we go. Football brains.
I'm hoping that A&M does really well. That's where my heart is. Only been at UT for 31 years. So, but both are what's UT was in the AP, I think, at number 10, and I think A&M was number 12. So we're pretty close there.
A&M's got a tough schedule.
True fact.
Yeah, A&M has a rough schedule.
True fact. Texas A&M was the last team to beat NC State.
Okay.
It was also not pretty.
So Kim, give us an OU preview. What you got? You've got the old Alabama quarterback. We know that. Jalen Hurts is
the 3rd Heisman in a row.
Yep, it could be. We're in pretty good shape with him, I bet. So
About the Boilermakers, Kim.
How about the Boilermakers? I haven't seen news about them yet for the season, but every year we just root to have as many wins as losses. That's what we go for as Purdue fans.
That's what we do at Alabama too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
James, permission to get Phil Steele on the show. James, would it be okay?
Okay, sure, no problem. Welcome to Football Brains. Dr. John, just give us a Penn State update. Go.
Oh man, I'm in Pennsylvania, but I'm not really a Penn Stater. I'm a Green Bay Packer fan.
That doesn't count.
Yeah, professional. People getting paid.
That's pro football.
That's horrible.
Grambling. Wow, that's a good college team. Thank you.
All right, Bill, read this. Can you see that? Does that say Packers?
It does. It does.
All right.
So forget Penn State. Give us a Green Bay preview. Let's go.
I think it's going to be an interesting season. Brand new head coach. We've got a healthy Aaron Rodgers. They made some good draft choices on defense. It's going to be very interesting. They start off the season in Chicago on Thursday night.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah, that could be a tough way to start the season.
Yeah.
So I promise we're not going to make this Football Brains, but Troy, you ever seen the Houston Texans play by any chance?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't in person or anything. I'm not big professional football fan. I like college football. Cannot stand really professional football. So I don't really care about the Cowboys or anybody else.
So, but anyway, my buddy from the gym right across the street has been quarterbacking the Houston Texans for the past 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Joe Webb. And, Joe has done a great. They got a bunch of injuries. They've got like A.J. McCarron. Joe is technically a third string quarterback, but they pay him for special teams and actually to be a wide receiver. He's kind of a utility type guy, which is kind of rare in football these days. But he played the whole first game and most of this second game. He's done a great job. So I've become a little Houston Texans fan because of Joe Webb. But Bill Murray, let's forget football. Let's talk weather. I can't wait. We got a fun show tonight.
You didn't even ask me about my team. What the heck? No. I'm not.
Well, hey. Do we want to take a friendly wager? Is OU going to be up against Alabama again this year? And if so, which one of us will win? That seems to be a frequently occurring event.
That could happen. Check it. Well, we'll see. Yeah. We'll get a little friendly wager going on. Greg, who's your team?
I'm in a split household.
Yeah.
So I'm an OU employee, but my girlfriend, my daughter, and my stepdaughter, all Oklahoma State.
Oh, the Cowpokes. All right.
Actually, we're for both of them until they play each other.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, it's great to have you on the show tonight, Greg. Stump is our guest panelist tonight. No stranger to the show. He's a senior research associate at Sims, and he is in charge of the RON coming up at the National Weather Association meeting, the annual meeting in Huntsville on Monday, the 9th of September. And we will be there, James Spann. We will be broadcasting live from Greg's event. Tell real quickly about what's going on with the event, what it is, who it's named for. I know that's an acronym, but it has a special name associated with it, Greg. And what can people do to get involved?
Yeah, so this is the 5th time we're doing it at an NWA meeting, the Research Operations Nexus Meetup. And this is named after and dedicated to Ron Przmolinski, who was the former science operations officer at the St. Louis National Weather Service office. He was one of the folks on the forefront of working with researchers and transferring new and great ideas from the research world and putting them into practice and operations. So what we do at the RON is we're trying to connect folks from the operational side with researchers. They have great ideas on both sides, but sometimes they're not working together to make these things kind of happen and come to fruition. So what we hope to do at the RON meetup is to establish these new relationships and start new projects off on a great direction to help the public with forecasting and warnings.
So if you are on either side of that nexus there, what do folks need to do to make sure they get to be a part of that?
So this is a free event. It's part of your registration with the National Weather Association annual meeting. We are going to be sending out an email this week with a link to a Google sign-up form. So folks can either sign up there or just show up. And it's going to be happening at 7 o'clock Monday evening, right next to the icebreaker rooms there. It's the South ballrooms. I believe we're connecting A, B, and C into one room. So
outstanding. How many folks you expect, Greg?
Last year we had 75 participants, as well as our facilitators, and one of our key participants was Dr. Louis Uccellini, the director of the National Weather Service. He'll be there again this year.
The tallest hog in the trough, right, James Mann?
Exactly, tallest hog in the trough.
So Greg, you're working on threats in motion, stuff like that. Give us some information on some of the stuff you're working on.
That's what Nate was alluding to, and Kim is also very much involved in that. We're having a workshop this week in Norman on Wednesday and Thursday. We're going to get together a bunch of experts from across the weather enterprise to talk about this new concept called threats in motion. It's simply put, it's essentially taking our current severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings and putting them into motion so they actually will follow along with the storm threats. And some of the real good opportunities that we get from threats in motion are that we are now able to provide what we call equitable lead time to the users that are downstream of these events. So the way that warnings are issued now, there's one warning issued after another for something like a long track storm, long track tornado event. And what that does is that people that are closest to the storm in the new warning get a lot less lead time than the people that are further down along the line in the warning. And with a moving warning polygon, what we're hoping to do is we're going to kind of make that warning lead time more equitable across the board so everybody gets very similar lead times. And also the average lead times go up with this as well. There's another benefit to threats in motion, and that is as the polygons move with the storms, the areas behind the storms automatically get cleared away from the warning. So we're able to provide this continually updating all clear messages as the storms move on.
Now we've got Greg here for a minute. Troy, I see you're wanting to ask a question. Anybody else jump in before we move on here?
Yeah, I just Greg, Troy Kimmel here. It's good to see you, Greg. How does this work in theory across different CWAs, across county warning areas, going from one office to another?
So we've actually looked into that very problem. We in the last few years, we worked with forecasters in our hazardous weather testbed on a scenario where we had storms moving across county warning area borders. And the way that threats in motion works with the software, the AWIP software, which is what the Weather Service forecasters use in their office, is that the storms are defined by objects now, and these objects can have ownership to them. So with a storm object is starting to approach the edge of a county warning area, they can transfer ownership to the downstream forecast office, and they can pick up that object and continue with it. So the result is, we hope, are seamless warnings going across these borders.
Great. Yeah.
So any other questions for Greg? Well, Greg, it's outstanding to have you here. You're welcome to stay. We got a fantastic guest tonight. You let us know whether you want to stay for a while, stay to the end, whatever. What's your pleasure?
I'm going to hang out for a little bit.
Woohoo! All right, get ready, man. He asks really tough questions, Matt. You better get ready. Tonight's guest weather brain is a senior meteorologist at Delta Airlines. He's also a weather flight commander for the 159th Air National Guard Wing in Jacksonville, Florida. Matt Tanner, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I hear you had a little run-in with the lake up there, and we've had a lot of our folks out at the lake vacationing here in the past few weeks, and you're no different. So, do you have any YouTube viral videos to show us or anything?
It's not viral yet, but
it will be after this.
As I get a little bit closer to the camera, you probably see my nose is pretty banged up, and I'll probably have a black eye in maybe another day or so. I'm going to try to share this video, so bear with me as I connect my phone to it.
Oh, impressive. Uh-oh, here we go. Live action. Kim, you're in charge of describing this for our audio audience.
Play by play.
I already know what's going to happen. I have never seen this video, but I'm pretty sure I've been the guy at the end of the rope.
Yes. So
it helped me get my wife So there's a story here. So
that'll be a good story.
My wife is in the boat, and my father-in-law is driving the boat. So I'll just put this in motion. It's just a 10-second clip, but you can get an idea of why my face looks a little banged up.
Here's the threat in motion.
Yep.
It's not moving for me. Do I have to push play on my end?
I keep pushing play on my screen here, and it's not doing it.
You know what? Sorry, I had the other screen up. Let's try that again.
Here we go. I
There
see
we
the
go.
cursor. I see the cursor. Click.
Those are some nice cumulus clouds back there.
Click harder.
There it
Oh,
goes.
here we go.
We're only getting one out of every, say, 5, 6 strings, but I think we get the idea.
You disappeared somewhere
Matt
along the
went
way there,
away.
Matt. Yeah.
Someone
So-
go get Matt.
It didn't quite work out, but I got about 6 feet of air in, and my body was fully vertical.
Ooh.
And then when I came down onto the mat, what hit first was my face. So anyway, yeah.
So was that your dad-in-law that patted you on the back there right before the show started?
It was. I told him I was going to tell this story.
Well, that's awesome. We're so glad that you joined us tonight from your family gathering. We've been really looking forward to you. Dave Johnson, we've been looking forward to this, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
So
I'm actually getting on one of your planes tomorrow morning, 2 of them, in fact, in order to get to where Greg and Kim are. So this is very interesting. We had a bunch of diversions because of the storms around Charlotte. Of course, that's not your hub. That's somebody. This is the other airline. But so, yeah, I'm definitely interested in this topic.
Depends on how this show goes. Matt can put you in the turbulence tomorrow morning. So
Yeah. Just tell me what your flight number is, and I'll do the rest.
You can probably deduce.
So Matt, talk about the size and scope of Delta's meteorology program. Talk about that for a minute.
Sure. So the basics, we have 26 staff meteorologists. We've got 3 lead meteorologists that take on additional duties and that are certainly senior and at least have a minimum of 15 years experience. And then we've got our manager, Stephanie, but we're a team of 26 meteorologists. We cover basically the entire globe with the exception of Antarctica and the Southern Indian Ocean 24/7, 365. If planes are in the air, which they always are, whether it's on over the Pacific Ocean, here across the United States and Latin America, across the Atlantic, Europe, Africa, planes are in the air. So we're trying to guard the skies.
So Troy was mentioning turbulence there, and obviously turbulence is probably one of the most important things you're forecasting, right?
It is. So we're split up as far as the number of desks that we cover, and we kind of shuffle responsibilities based on the desk that you sit at. So one area is totally looking at surface weather, surface threats for the United States to include thunderstorms. And then another set of desks is solely looking at upper air forecasting. So that's going to be your turbulence. That's for the domestic United States and Latin America, including Canada. We've got a desk that covers the entire Pacific Ocean to include Hawaii, all the way down to our Sydney flight that flies daily, and all the way over to Southeast Asia. We've got several flights that come into Japan. Delta will be the number one airline going into 2020, number one U.S. airline as far as number of flights into Japan. We've got flights all the way down into the Philippines and again, Southeast Asia. We've got another desk that handles the Atlantic flights. We've got a very healthy partnership with Air France and KLM, 2 of our partners over in Europe. So we cover a lot of flights going over to Europe, going down to Africa, as well as flights that traverse, the Middle East and Russia. So when we are looking at the upper air side, which is usually a side that a lot of people don't think about, is when it comes to looking at turbulence and forecasting turbulence. So one of the things that we really focus on is locating the jet stream, locating where the max winds are, figuring out whether or not the jet is building, the jet is coming into a trough. Are there multiple jets present? What are the slopes of the jets? Because you got to think about where the max jet core is, and then where's the tropopause going to be in relation to that. I guess I should have loaded on some 3D graphics for you guys, but typically, if you've got a jet stream in the northern hemisphere, the max winds, right, let's just say is my fist, and the tropopause is going to be a few thousand feet above that jet. And as you move towards the equator, is actually going to increase in height. All right. Now, the tropopause is the most stable layer in the entire atmosphere. And when we have stability, we typically don't have a lot of turbulence, right? So if you ever get above the jet stream, like a lot of military fighters can, they don't have any issues. There's never going to be any turbulence, thousands and thousands of feet above the tropopause. But when you're really close to the tropopause, you actually can have some pretty extreme turbulence. And the reason for that is, imagine the tropopause as a lid, a very thick lid. There's a few thousand feet thick. And if a jet is building or increasing as it's coming into an area, it is going to hit against that lid, and it's going to create vibrations that are going to create waves. And as you're going through turbulence, it's kind of hard to think about it when you're in it, but it's a wave-like motion, whether it's going to be that light chop, or it's going to be light to moderate, it's light occasional moderate, it's going to be moderate or even severe turbulence. You're going through some kind of wave in the atmosphere, and it just depends on what the frequency of that wave is, how severe is the turbulence going to be. So we look for...
Go, man. Go, keep going.
Okay. So we got to know where the jet core is. We have to know where the tropopause is. And then also below the jet, we talk a lot about surface fronts, your warm front, cold front, stationary front, included front. All right. So we've got a lot of shear that can happen as you go up in the atmosphere. And typically when we're looking at a weather map, after about 850 millibars, it may be hard to track where those fronts are. But we kind of operate on a continuous front theory that the front actually extends all the way up to the jet. And so if you were to look at a weather map and find the warm front, or look on a weather map and find the cold front, you're going to want to go towards the west or towards the north, depending on what you're looking at. And you're going to want to follow that all the way up to the jet. So as you go towards the poles, that front is increasing with height. And as the front increases with height, we look for the wind differences, and that's how we calculate shear. As most of you know, we're going to calculate shear one of two ways. Either going to be speed shear, so you've got winds that are increasing very rapidly with height or decreasing very rapidly with height, or we may look at the turning of the winds as you go up in height to look at shear. And we've got some nominal values that are, 40 and 50 years in the making. We say, okay, if this is going to be 10 knots of shear per 1,000 feet, that's probably going to be light to moderate turbulence. So we look for the jet to locate where the trope is going to be, and also to find out where the upper front's going to be. And the thing is, just because you have a jet doesn't necessarily mean that you've got strong shear in the tropopause or in the upper front. So there's a lot of diagnosing and analyzing that we have to do.
Dr. John, that's some of the best pound for pound weather geekery we've had in a while right there. So anything you can add to that, Dr. John?
Yeah, let me ask. Fantastic discussion, Matt. A number of years ago, I was flying from, I think it was Atlanta to Philly. And one of the things I typically do before I fly is I look at the upper air, just because I'm curious that way. And I think most of us, when we fly, we want to know what the weather is when we're flying. And I remember looking at the upper air and thinking, this route is going to take us right across the core of a 300 millibar jet. And I was wondering, why do the pilots always seem surprised when the flight
little bumpy.
That's got to be part of the forecast scenario that goes to the pilots, right, when they're going to fly.
So I'll say this. Now, when it comes to the meteorology department at Delta, we're very different than other airlines, is that we don't contract the work out. So we're sitting there, we're in the operations center. The operations center, I feel like it's the size of a football field. It's not that big, but we're in a huge building, all on the same floor. All the operations are on the same floor, with dispatchers, both international and domestic dispatchers. Each one of those dispatchers, depending on what they're working, could have anywhere from 5 to 20 flights that they're monitoring at one time. So when we look at turbulence, we try to forecast out 24 hours in advance. And weather changes so much, and even a change of 50 miles can have huge repercussions on our forecast and what the dispatchers have put into the computer to figure out what is the best flight path. So the blame can really be on nobody, because even after we forecast it, we do our due diligence, it may still have slid 20 miles west or east or north or south or where we thought it would be. And 20 miles, we say, we were pretty close. But if you're in the airplane, you're saying you didn't nail it.
Matt, Troy here, a question for you. How, without giving away all the company's secrets, how do you supply graphics and that sort of thing to the flight crews in flight? Is that something that's totally by iPad nowadays, or by computer, or that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we're talking about landing people on Mars in a couple of years. So Delta has done a great job of integrating technology with our pilots and the graphics that we're producing. We used to produce, and this was just last year, we used to produce a 2D map that was basically drawing over one of the maps of the North Atlantic, of the domestic United States, the Pacific Ocean, and we would draw the jets on there. We'd hand analyze everything, put the jets on there, put our areas of turbulence and what the severity we thought it was going to be, as well as the flight levels. And the pilots would take that map, print it out, and then they go out the door. And the dispatchers would have already done all their flight planning. Nowadays, in 2019, our pilots are all switching to iPads. And whenever we make a change, it's just mere minutes before the change gets to their iPad, which is great. And so when they are able to look at the picture of the weather on their iPad, not only can they see our graphics, and we've got two sets of areas that we draw. We draw areas that are forecasted areas, and I'll get into this in just a minute, but also if we've got PIREPs of planes going through that area that confirm our altitudes and confirm the level of severity of the turbulence, then we label those differently so the pilots know, hey, this is not just a forecasted area, this is a real area. But they're able to see that through an iPad and through something called the Delta Weather Viewer, that is a proprietary system that we're still developing and continuing to make it better.
Well, coming to an in-flight entertainment system near you.
Yeah, exactly. years ago, Matt, and it sounds like to me you're in the same place, but about 15 or 20 years ago, the station manager here in Austin got me over there, and I actually got the chance to come to Atlanta and visit with y'all. And we were in the wood panel building, which I assume is near the corporate offices or somewhere. I remember that floor, and I don't know if they've moved over the last 15 years or so, but it was amazing to see everyone from operations, dispatch, and meteorology there in the same room. And I'll also give a plug real quick. If you're anywhere near this part of the world, Delta Airlines has done something very unique. And if you're ever in Atlanta, you have a little extra time, the Delta Museum is amazing. That is adjacent to the main campus for Delta Airlines. I'm actually there at least twice a year with airline shows and things like that. Really amazing what Delta has done there. But on top of the meteorology as well, Matt.
And if you do come by and want to take a look at the museum, you can get a tour up to the operations floor, and you can see how everything is divvied up and set out. We've got not only the dispatchers, we've got the maintenance crew, the top level maintenance guys who are just like wizards who know about these, part number 1,127 in just one airplane, and they know how to best to fix it. It's something. It's a thing of beauty. Well,
if you just, Matt, to let people know, Delta Airlines has completely kept intact a 767, which is inside the building. They also, one of their last 747s is actually on display now as one of the DC-9s, and also a 757 on the grounds there. It really is amazing for people who Delta Airlines has really done a lot in preserving the history of Delta, Northwest, and the airlines on back. So I really, getting away from weather for a second, highly recommend that if you're in the Atlanta area.
I could do that.
But aren't all weather geeks airline geeks too, and vice versa? I think
so. At least on this show we are. Yeah. Matt, tell us a little bit about. There's something that I think is unique, and you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but something unique about you guys in that if I'm a pilot and I'm, setting up my flight and everything, I have to rely on the official sources of weather. That's what they tell you. You can self-brief, but they really want you to use the official source. You get your flight briefing from Leidos or through, through ForeFlight or something where you're getting these official like TAFs and everything. So thinking about the terminal aerodrome forecasts, you guys make your own TAFs that you can plan against regardless of the ones coming from the Weather Service. And the FAA lets you do it. How did you swing that?
There were many people that came before me that put a lot of time and effort in to be able to make that happen. So I take zero credit for that. I just walked into it when I joined Delta. But yeah, so what we have done over the course of 40 years is be able to give the FAA what our training materials are on, give them the level of detail that we go to when we are diagnosing mountain wave regions, to looking at those TAFs, to looking at volcanic ash and how we forecast volcanic ash. And we've gotten the FAA to sign off on us being able to write our own TAFs, us being able to, and TAFs for anywhere in the world, mind you, for maybe an emergency location in Eastern Russia, which we don't want to land at, but if you're going over the water, you've got to have certain emergency alternates that you go to. So we write TAFs in Eastern Russia. We write TAFs for anywhere in the world that we need to. For the United States, on a regular basis, we write TAFs for 10 locations, which are the current Delta hubs. We've got it in Seattle, Los Angeles, Salt Lake City for the West Coast. For the kind of mid-north, we've got Detroit and Minneapolis, St. Paul. For the south, we've got Atlanta, which is the world's largest and busiest airport. And then for the northeast, we've got Washington, D.C., not IAD, but DCA. We've got JFK, LaGuardia, and Boston. And just like the National Weather Service, we write them every 6 hours, but we write 30-hour TAFs. So for those 10 locations, guaranteed we'll get a TAF every 6 hours, and we follow all the rules for amending as needed. But that ability to write our own TAFs when it comes to the timing of thunderstorms, when it comes to the timing of a wind shift or a wind gust that other airlines may be planning against, our flights, we may get an hour of flights more in than the other guys, our competition, because of that agreement we have in place and because of the training that we've carried on and all the lessons we've learned through the years.
Let me, I'm going to poke my head back in because everyone here, tell me, in 2019, I'm looking at the apps that I use occasionally in the classroom, Dr. John. Windy, Earth, all the apps, all the software where you can log in on the websites and see the upper level winds. Matt, I assume you've seen that before. How accurate are those? Now, I've flown places before, and I'm doing like Bill says, and like James says, I'm looking ahead at this, trying to figure out where it may be bumpy and where it may not be. But, with all this technology we have, even with stuff like these websites, it's really pretty remarkable what you can see.
It is. What it boils down to at the end of the day is that twice a day across the United States, at every single one of the National Weather Service offices, they let off a weather balloon with a Raywinson attached to it, and then we only get a real idea of what's going on twice a day, and that's painful because in between those 12-hour periods, with things are rapidly changing, you've got a deepening low, you've got a hurricane that's moving close in, or you're expecting a squall line to develop, and you want to be able to time out those thunderstorms. It can be maddening at times. So we do have a great wealth of information. We are still limited. So we've got our actual real information we get from those. And then we've got something that we're able to use when planes are ascending or descending from an airport. We can actually tap in. It's a password protected type element for many reasons. But the airlines share amongst each other the ability to do an airplane sounding. So as the plane is say, leaving Atlanta and climbing to 30,000 feet, you can get a pretty accurate readout on wind speed, wind direction, the temperature, the dew point. You can't get too many more elements off of that, but having that real-time data at 6Z or 17Z with daytime heating, you're trying to get the direction of the thunderstorms. That's something that we can use, and we do use very often.
And that, Matt, is the ACARS data, right? That's owned by the airlines, basically.
Owned and yes, and shared.
Okay.
So is that data getting into the models and the weather service at all, Matt? Maybe you can answer that, Greg or Kim. Maybe y'all know.
I don't think that it is, and I don't know if it's a reliability type thing, because there are times where you look and for some reason it got the first 5,000 feet and didn't report anything else after that. But I don't think that information is fed in per se.
So why is it only ascending and descending? Why is it not at level flight or whatever also?
Well, that's an excellent question. It may be because of some kind of GPS tracking. If you look at the map that we use and going onto this website, if you click on close to a city, and you can see all these different directions that the airplanes are flying, and you get that ACARS data just for that area, that small area. So that's maybe why I think it is. Now I can look at any of my Delta flights en route with the software that we use, click on them, and I can get their flight level, I can get their temperature and dew point, I can get the wind speed and wind direction, and all the calculations are already built in, to subtract the number from their traveling speed. So we do have that ability.
So nobody lives at the airport, Bill, and even fewer people live at flight level.
But that looks like if you fed all that into your convective information, Dr. John Scala, storm analyst extraordinaire, all the instability and shear information there would just be phenomenal, I would think.
Yeah, but it's pretty isolated as well, though, Bill, right? Because these aircraft are following a pretty defined flight path. So it's not as if they're coming in from all these different directions.
Oh, okay.
High resolution data, 360 degrees.
I have noticed that on my FlightAware software. They're generally on little pathways. That is
although that will be changing, although it's going to take time. But the switch to next gen aviation, where planes will navigate via GPS and eventually try to get away from the old idea of these radio beacons and all these planes sort of funneling along these highways in the sky. Eventually, we're going to get toward airplanes being able just to take the most direct route instead of, having to go from here to here to here to here to here to here to get from point A to point B. You just actually say, point the plane toward point B, and there you go, and adjust for the wind and whatnot, and that should shave some time off. And that, I think, would maybe randomize. You're still going to have a lot of bias because there's a lot of flights that go between, say, in Atlanta and New York City, or New York and LA, that kind of thing. So you're going to have a lot of, bias right along those routes, but I think you'll get a little more spread, along them.
So the flight plans won't sound nearly as interesting when that happens, right, Nate?
Yeah, you lose all of the fun the IFR waypoints and everything. But at the same time, and I think, when you're coming into an airport where you get a lot of those, you'll still have to, follow some of those, just because you'll have more air traffic controllers hands-on guiding flights and sequencing them in order to maintain separation and everything. And so I think that's going to be the last part of that to change. And at the rate we're going, none of that's changing very quickly.
Yeah, I'll say something about ATC. So even if we flight plan a certain way at a certain altitude, and we're doing that because of turbulence that we're forecasting, or that we've seen and we've got confirmed PIREPs, the pilot may say, "Hey, I want to move to 270, 27,000 feet." And ATC, they could just say, "No, sorry, we're full, too much traffic. You got to stay at 31." And even if they're getting slammed with moderate turbulence at 31, you still have to abide by what ATC says.
Matt, I'm glad you went in that direction. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead, John. I was going to say that ATC is, having to do that. Not, the pilots are trying to avoid weather and to make it a comfortable flight, and I think that's a good thing. But air traffic control is also having to keep you away from planes that may be above you and below you and to the side, and they have to, if they can do that and keep everybody in smooth air, that's great. Otherwise, they're going to maintain separation. And if you have to fly through some light chop to make that happen, then you'll have to deal with it.
Matt, I've got a question for you. One of the hazards I know that's been big in the past, and I talk to students about this in class all the time. If you don't do anything in an airplane, I don't care about the seatbelt sign. You always stay buckled in. With clear air turbulence, this is still an issue. How good are we at telling where this clear air turbulence, and especially in trans-Pacific and transatlantic routings and things like that?
So I would have to say that we're better than most and probably better than anybody else, but not to say that we're perfect, because we're nowhere near that. The problem with especially over the oceans is that we have zero data. So we've got this full reliance on the models. Now, when we get to a point where we're nowcasting and we're no longer forecasting, we do have the ability to look at satellite, and satellite can actually tell us a lot about what's going on. So one of the things that we do look for is convergence. We look for convergence. We look for dry air, which would also signify convergence. And that could be from a number of reasons. You could have a deformation zone. You could have one jet that is plowing into another jet, for whatever reason. A lower jet or upper jet. You could have a jet moving into a trough, or even in the absence of any jet, you could just have a really powerful trough line. And that trough line as the planes are going through it, when and most people maybe know this or don't know this, but when the pilots are planning, they don't put into the computer 30,000 feet. What they put in is 300 millibars. Right, so they are flying on a constant pressure level, not a constant altitude. And now you and I are not going to feel that difference, because as you move through the atmosphere, it's not minimal, but the climbs are usually pretty gradual. Well, if you come into a trough line and it's a steep trough and you're at 300 millibars, 30,000 feet, you may quickly go down to 27 or 25,000 and pop back up, and that motion is going to certainly wreak some havoc, and it may only last 2 minutes, but a pilot's going to say, "Wow, that was moderate. That was a moderate turbulence." So satellite and nowcasting is just as good as using the PIREPs when it comes to confirming whether or not the models have a good feel on what's going on across the oceans.
But so, at this hour of the night, it's a little after, it's 10 after 10 Eastern time. If you go look, and I encourage everyone to do this because I think you get a good feel for this, go look at FR24 or one of the flight programs where you can look. And I want you to look at that area from the Northeast U.S. eastbound to Great Britain and also to western parts of Europe. Folks, you would not believe how many planes there are in there. And what I wanted to ask you, Matt, do we get PIREPs from those planes that are traveling? Do you see that much of those out over the open Atlantic? Does it help you that much?
PIREPs are powerful things, because they're letting us know whether or not the turbulence that we're forecasting is happening. Now, most of the American flights, and not just Delta, but really all carriers, when they are going to the there we go, pulling up some satellite. When we're going eastbound over to Europe, we're typically leaving in the evening, but everybody has different times that they're going to leave. And you're leaving out of Seattle or leaving out of Salt Lake City or Atlanta or Boston, you're all going to be leaving at different times. And you've got not only all the American carriers, then you've got all the European carriers that are also taking their passengers to and fro. So out over the North Atlantic is much, there's a lot more traffic over the North Atlantic than over the Pacific, but those PIREPs come in very handy. And going along with that, so with, there we go.
Yeah, see.
Oh, man, that's so cool.
Yeah, it is.
All right, and if you want to leave that image up, I can kind of talk about why the planes look like they're in lines.
Line the great circle.
But Matt, what I just, do we get as many PIREPs from that highway you're looking at there in the sky as we should? Are pilots good about making those reports, I guess is what I'd. for all pilots?
Yeah, so for all pilots.
Yeah.
Yes and no. So sometimes pilots have the mindset that if they're going into an area where we forecasted light moderate turbulence and they're allowed to fly through it and they get light moderate turbulence, they'll say, well, it was forecasted. That's exactly what happened. And so they won't report a PIREP because they flew through the area that we forecasted, right? And not everybody does that, but some pilots do have that mindset. And that's just a communication problem we've got 80,000 employees. So, it's hard to communicate especially when we come down with any changes.
But Matt, as well, I would point out that this is not just an issue with commercial pilots. It is an issue. The FAA has identified this as being an issue with private pilots. They want those PIREPs, and they really are encouraging that now.
We've had a member of the NTSB, one of their meteorologists, investigators on this program a couple of times in the past to talk about how valuable those PIREPs are and how we're not getting nearly as many as we like, including, to Matt's point, the ones that actually say, yeah, you forecast X and X is what I got. And I think, part of that, from a private pilot standpoint, a lot of times, a lot of my flights, I'm not in the air long enough to issue a PIREP report. And by the time I'm on the ground, I've got to move on to other things. But hopefully, some of the longer flights, there's enough time that you could dial up, flight service or air traffic control and do that. It takes time. It takes your focus away from flying the airplane and you having to interact with somebody. I mean, it would be nice if there was a way, we've got so many technological upgrades, even in the GA cockpit, things like ForeFlight or Garmin's version of the flight mapping software. I'm drawing a blank on the name of it. And if we could get to a point where that was something that we could use to funnel in a PIREP, you just tap, 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 and you're done, that actually would be pretty slick. But as it is, you're having to do all of this very manually, either on the radio or on the phone after you land. And it's a lot of, okay, where were you? What kind of plane were you in? It doesn't take long, but it does take time. And it's a manual process when so much of the world is now very heavily automated.
But Nate and Matt, I mean, the thing about this is, as Matt mentioned, is this report that you're not making because that's what we expected. Hell, that verifies that verifies that TAF that Matt has issued in Atlanta. So, we need that. We need that information.
So, Nate was like teeing up something great for me to talk about. So the problem with PIREPs and even reporting PIREPs, because very rarely do you actually get a PIREP right when it's happening. There could be a time delay of 5 minutes. There could be a time delay of, I've seen time delays of 3 hours, because maybe they had other things going on, or one of those things where it was forecasted and then the dispatcher, as they're getting ready to land, said, hey, did you get anything back in that area we forecasted? Oh yeah. We got moderate turbulence. Like, what? Okay. So now
verification.
Now share that with verification. But something that Delta is doing is on all of our new planes, we have this, and on the older planes they're putting them on there, something called an EDR. An EDR stands for eddy disbursement rate. Okay. And so we talk about, kind of the wave motion that you can get. And when you're looking at shears in the atmosphere, everything really is like some kind of small little eddy current, little eddy loop. And some of the loops are big and some of the loops are really small. And that happens with thunderstorms. That happens in just everyday weather. And when it comes to riding on a pressure field, an isobaric pressure field, you're going to feel every single one of those eddies. So an EDR is a little device that we have attached to airplanes, and what it does is it calculates what that bumping is. It calculates what the feel of the aircraft is over that eddy current, and it takes the pilot completely out of it, because one pilot who's maybe got 40 years of experience has been on a flight for 5 hours, goes through this one area, and he says, that's just light, occasional moderate turbulence. So he'll report it as that. Maybe you've got a new pilot and a plane right behind him who's just starting their flight. And they go through that area and they say, man, like, we got rocked around pretty good. That was moderate, borderline severe turbulence. When you do a PIREP, it's all subjective, right? It's all what the pilot feels. And so many other factors can go into that. Is the pilot tired? Is the pilot experienced? What kind of plane are they in? Because the planes are shaped differently in different sizes, and so one going through it may just handle it a little bit better than another one. So this EDR takes all the subjectivity out of it, and it's completely objective. And we're able to see it. It gives us a range of numbers that we've kind of identified to a certain level of turbulence. So we can see an unbiased opinion what all the other planes in the area are reporting, whether or not they're actually reporting PIREPs.
Matt, you went down a direction I really wanted to ask, and that is having to do with the pilots themselves. You've got, I'm sure, years of experience of talking with these guys. I've got several years of experience flying in and around storms in 5 different research aircraft. So I've met a number of different pilots who have different skill sets and different talents, but they're all uniquely qualified to fly in challenging weather. That's not necessarily the case with a commercial pilot. So I'm curious what your experience has been with the abilities and the skills of the current commercial pilots.
I mean, the training, everybody who's coming to Delta, I feel like, that comes through on a pilot tour, right? That's really the only way I'm going to meet them in person, unless they're coming to fly on, coming into town to do some annual training or something, and they stop by the operations center, we call it the OCC, to see us and just say hello and thank us or whatever. The level of experience is very high. Whether they're coming out of the military, whether they went through, getting their own private license and then just kind of went through the ranks. I feel like everybody that is in the skies is pretty well experienced, and the technology that that's in the cockpit with them is, it's never been as good as it is.
Okay. And talk about, Dr. John, you wanted to bring up water vapor because Matt mentioned that. Is AMDAR still a factor on every plane or a lot of planes, and it's measuring water vapor, right, Matt?
You said the AMDAR?
Yeah, I think. Is that right? Did I read that somewhere along the way? Or did I have that mixed up?
You're talking about the ACARs?
Yeah, probably so. Is that part of that process is measuring water vapor?
I've never used that data. I've never looked at the humidity values. I may look at it for the temperature. If I'm, aside from winds, the only other data that I look at is maybe the temperature to figure out, are they still are they close to the tropopause? Are they, above the troposphere and now in the stratosphere, and temperatures, constant or starting to rise. But I don't ever look at the humidity values coming off of an airplane.
Dr. John, did you want to expound on any of that from what the discussion where it was going a minute ago?
I was just applauding Matt for talking about the use of water vapor. I can tell a bedtime story with water vapor. There is everything you ever want to know about the atmosphere is in water vapor. So it's the greatest tool out there for looking at motion in the atmosphere.
It is.
Now, Matt, I always get so excited when I'm getting on one of your Delta planes because I love Delta. And I see a good tailwind versus a good headwind. It can make quite a difference in our flight times, right?
Huge. You're getting age. Enjoy the cookies. So the flight planning software is also light years ahead of where it was, 15, 20 years ago. But there's several different routes that dispatchers can look at, and obviously domestic and international dispatchers are looking at 2 different things because you're looking at going over the ocean. But always we try to get a tailwind. So if we've got the jet moving to the east, say we're in the Pacific Ocean, and it may not be a great circle, but you do the calculation and we still may get there 15 or 20 minutes early because we're riding right in that jet core close to it, so long as we don't have any turbulence forecasts.
Matt, let me ask you one, and this is going back for James and I guess James and myself, the older people on the show.
I'm glad you don't put me there.
You too, Bill.
You got too much. You got too much hair, John.
We go back to we go back to the times of Dr. Fujita and his looking at microburst and the many accidents that we ended up seeing because of microburst and because of wind shear, takeoff and landing, New Orleans, Pan Am back in the late 70s, and there was a Delta at DFW. Pilots' mindsets, I assume, because of simulator training and other things like this, and the stuff that's out there now. Pilots, this is all different than it was 20 or 30 years ago, right? I mean, as far as when you have a pilot looking at a thunderstorm out there, when it's near the aerodrome, when it's near the airport, I'm assuming it's different than it was 20 or 30 years ago completely.
It was because we didn't really understand the intensity of the microburst, or even how the airplane would handle itself, right? Which is why those accidents occurred. I mean, those pilots did, what they thought was best. Unfortunately, those accidents are something that we have learned from, not just Delta. I mean, safety is something that is shared amongst all the airlines. So the training is certainly there. The technology, the software that's built into the cockpit understands what that feeling is like. When the airplane is descending rapidly, they know that they know what they need to do. But also, at the end of the runways, sometimes you can see it depending on how close the road is, but they have wind shear sensors now, usually depending on the size of the airport, at least at 4 corners, sometimes even in the middle of the airport as well. And those operate on a radar that is solely at the airfield. It's got a smaller range than other radars. But what it does is it actually looks at the cells that are coming in. It assigns numerical value to what the DBZs are as far as the rainfall amounts. But it also has different alerts for gust fronts as well as for wind shear and hail.
Well, let me ask you one more, and then I know people have other questions. I just wanted to, I picked out a flight. I picked out a Delta flight right now. Delta Flight 589 en route from Seattle over to Shanghai. And they're just north of Mount McKinley up in Alaska. My question for you, Matt, how do y'all actually talk to these crews? If they want to talk to meteorology at Delta Airlines, do you talk to them via radio or via secure communication?
When they're in the air, what we typically use is the ACAR system. Okay. So we're sending them a text message.
Okay.
I've never had a time where I've spoken with them over phone in the air.
Okay.
Or by radio. It's all by the ACAR system.
But that's pretty instant, right? I mean, you want to talk to Flight 589 heading to Shanghai, you could do that pretty quickly.
It's like a text message.
Okay.
Hey, Matt, this is James. Down here in the Deep South, we deal with these air mass thunderstorms in the summer every day. And you don't know at 7 o'clock in the morning where they're going to be at 4 in the afternoon. Atlanta, Nashville, Birmingham. How do you deal with those? How do you prepare pilots for those in the morning for air mass storms? I've been dealing with them all day today. How do you deal with them?
It's a thorn in our side that lasts from June until September. We obviously we use every model that we have at our disposal to look at the HER, which is going to be your high resolution rapid refresh that happens every hour, to your NAM. I try to analyze, where the 500 millibar trough is. I try to look at vertical velocities at the lower levels, 700 millibars, because even when the model is saying, here's where the precip or here's where the radar is forecast to be, I still try to look for a couple of ingredients. And even if the model is not suggesting we're going to have rainfall in a certain area, I try to look for something that could possibly enhance thunderstorms over a certain area. Another thing that we do is, writing our TAFs. So we have a Prob 20, a Prob 40, a tempo group, and then also your main line for thunderstorms. So we try to isolate the time that we're putting a certain location kind of in that threat time for a thunderstorm there on station. But at the end of the day, we're at the mercy of Mother Nature.
Yeah, aren't we all? So how is your relationship with the FAA in general? Good, bad, so-so? How would you describe?
I think it's great. I mean, I think that the different privileges that we have, nobody else in the industry has that. So I think we do a really good job. Usually they don't come looking for information because we're typically sending them a lot of information, sending them what our annual training is, if we've got any special projects that we're working on for mountain waves or for turbulence, any kind of lessons learned over some kind of large outbreak of severe turbulence, we send to them. So, it's always better to give information than just to sit and hold it, and then they come looking and then they start digging.
Matt, what? I'm sorry, James, go ahead.
One more. I was going to say, Matt, do you ever communicate with the competitive airline meteorology staffs during big events by any chance? So
we don't. Most of the, and just forgive me, I'm going to get close as I plug my computer in so it doesn't run out of battery. So we don't. Again, a lot of the airlines, a lot of the major airlines don't have weather people there with them. It's contracted out through different smaller companies, larger companies. So we don't have any interaction with them. The only interaction that we have is all passive. It is through the sharing of PIREPs. We allow them to see what our PIREPs are, and in turn, they allow us to see what their PIREPs are. Yeah. So we do get, I guess that's some kind of industry collaboration. If there are bad events, when we look at the lessons learned in like a turbulence working group, that would be the other time when we would come together, maybe kind of share some notes, share some information, but really it's all in the purpose of safety.
So it's kind of like I'll show you my power up if you show me your power up, right? Matt?
Show title.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. We appreciate it.
Sorry about that, Troy. Matt, talk about Air France 447 and lessons learned. Anything go through the industry based on that incident?
Yeah, a lot was done. European and U.S. carriers, they've got different codes of conduct they have to operate by, right? And when you're flying over the ocean, a lot can happen. So one of the things that we were not tracking is something we call high ice water content. And so when you've got these very large thunderstorms, especially as you get close to the equator, you've got all of this ice water that is minus 20 to minus 40 degrees Celsius. And it is still in its liquid form because of the updraft and because of just the immense strength of the thunderstorm. And so as airplanes are flying through that, the water can collect on the wings and just instantly freeze, right, when it makes contact with the wing. So what we have done is when we are drawing areas of concern that we put into our software that our pilots get, we make sure to annotate whether or not that high ice water content is present or not. And just to give the pilots a heads up, because sometimes even once the thunderstorm is done, you still have a very large area of that high ice water content.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So for somebody who's watching the program, listening to us, they don't like turbulence. We've already talked about sometimes you can't get around it because it's too big. Air traffic control is not going to let you, whatever. For somebody who's nervous about flying, what do you tell them? What's the magic words to help ease people's fear about turbulence or otherwise planes flying into bad weather of any kind?
Stay on the ground.
Fly Delta big jets, right, man?
The bigger the better. I would say if you look at the track record over the last 10, 15, and 20 years, and you look at the amount of accidents that have occurred, the ratio is pretty low. I mean, the technology, the training that the pilots go through, we've got a pretty strong track record of keeping people safe after a lot of hard lessons that were learned in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Well, Matt, I mean, the bottom line is that aviation is inherently safe. You want to get killed, come to Austin on any highway. I'm sitting here watching. I've got a fatality accident working now here in Austin. And most of you've heard that we lost one of our athletes from UT last night, about 3 miles south of here. You want to get killed, get on one of the highways in this country.
All right. If you've never been to Atlanta,
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Anytime between 5 a.m. and 11 a.m. for the rush hour, and then 12 p.m. to 7 p.m.
7, 8, 9.
Anytime.
Yeah,
So,
if it's a time that ends in M, it's rush hour, one direction or another.
Bottom line, it's inherently safe.
It's inherently safe. Knowing what I know, and so this goes to anybody. I don't care what that seatbelt sign says.
Yep.
Always keep your seatbelt on unless you got to get up and go to the bathroom and get your bag. And as soon as I sit back down, I just put it right back on, because even with all the technology, even with the pilots being able to see a radar that's attached to the airplane to look in front of them, clear air turbulence still happens. And it's always going to happen. There will never be a time where we get to a place where you have smooth air no matter where you go for 100 million reasons.
And all it takes is to go look at a few of these pictures that shows people's head dent in the overhead bin above their seat. And I'm serious, people have been killed that way in clear air turbulence. And I just don't understand at all why people would be unbuckled in an airplane. I just don't get it, except the bathroom, like Matt pointed out.
And the new A220s, there's a window in the bathroom.
But is there a seatbelt on the toilet, Nate? That's the important
that's
question.
where I've always wondered about that.
And that's a show title.
Take one of those here at the house.
Oh my goodness!
We're going too far stream.
Man, I love, one of my guilty pleasures is listening to ATC online when I'm in the plane. I'm not supposed to, I know, but we were sitting in a delay at Love on a Southwest flight one night, and I know that I heard this. I heard the controller tell one of the Southwest flights to point their plane on the ground toward a certain direction and tell them what they saw on the radar. Is that really true? I had more radar power in my phone with radar scope than it sounded like the controllers had in the tower at Love. Is that true, or did I make that story up?
I think that's a strong possibility. Sure.
Really, Troy? So you agree with Matthew?
I've heard pilots tell me before that they turn that nose in that direction and do a little scan, and hey,
instant.
Yep.
Yeah, the other funny story, I was coming through Atlanta the other day, coming back from somewhere, and one of the controllers, they're speaking really clipped, really quickly, and one of the pilots was sort of lackadaisical and said, in the readback said, Oscar to Juliet, take 27, follow the something or another. And the controller just bit his head off. He said, "Sir, there are a lot of something or others on this field. You need to read it back correctly." I thought that was a pretty snippy comment right there. That was pretty cool.
But those readbacks are required.
They are.
I'm not a pilot, but they are required.
I am a pilot, and they are required.
They are required.
And you cannot get a clearance without hearing readback correct. You'll listen to JFK and some of the air traffic control in and out of that airport. Those there, LaGuardia. I mean, those are some of the best in the business. You don't get to be an air traffic controller in that airspace and really not know what the heck you're doing.
And that goes for, come on, Nate, all air traffic controllers. Yeah. I mean, just to hear what they do, like Bill says, and there's a great app, by the way, for that on this. Yeah. And it's really amazing, really a talented group of people, because I'm about that close to nuts as I am right now. I can't imagine being driven off the edge by what they do. I mean, they do an amazing job.
Did any of you ever play that computer game called Traycon several years ago? Many years ago, 25 years ago. Now, Nate, are you telling a story, or did you really not play it? That was a fun game. And I mean,
I think was that before or after Pong?
Oh, good Lord. This was a fun game. You were controlling these planes in a real airspace. It was really cool, Nate. Now,
I'd rather control real airplanes.
Oh, whatever, please. I think you need to be doing a weekly aviation segment, Nate. We need to you be on there with Tony, man.
Yeah. Good stuff. So one question, what's the coolest? So are you, well, I want to ask that. What's the coolest thing about working for an airline? The coolest perk that we wouldn't think about?
The coolest perk you wouldn't think about?
Or are there any that you wouldn't think about?
The cookies.
Ooh.
I mean, other than the unlimited supply of Biscoff.
I don't get cookies. I don't get cookies.
No,
Just,
no cookies.
They don't hang cookies out. You know what's something that
are you in the group of folks that gets to fly non-rev or?
Maybe.
Maybe.
But I think people would generally think about that. If you work for an airline, that's one of the perks that you get to fly non-rev on a non-rev status, which is not always all it's cracked up to be.
It's like glorified standby, but especially with the load factors that most of the commercial airlines are flying these days.
Yeah, when Las Vegas
3 days.
When Las Vegas is 109 degrees. And they don't want to take bags off. They're going to take non-rev passengers off. So yeah. But I'd say one of the perks that you wouldn't think about unless you actually went there and saw the OCC is that I've got 6 very large monitors, and you've probably seen the Veridesk where like you pull the little desk up. I've got a desk on hydraulics that I just like push a button and it rises just as high or as low as I want. So nice. I love that thing.
Cool.
All right, James Finn, you can wrap us up so we can get out of here before 11 o'clock.
We've got to take a quick break here, and we're going to come back with Tony Rice, and we'll do a weather roundup. We'll do picks of the week and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
The moon reaches last quarter, the end of this week. And this is one of the best times to observe the moon, with or without binoculars, because the shadows cast by the sun's low angle highlights craters and ridges that are normally hidden in the sun's glare. After midnight on Thursday or Friday, look along the terminator, that line between the lit and unlit halves of the moon. Look for a darker patch near the top. This is the Mare Imbrium, or the Sea of Rains. This second largest of the moon's mare is actually an impact crater, one of the largest in the solar system. It was formed when a sizable space rock impacted it about 4 billion years ago. Molten lava pooled there and left a relatively smooth, darker surface that's easy to spot, even during a full moon. In the days leading up to this last quarter moon at the end of the week, mountains that ring this spot become more prominent, particularly the Monte Apennines, which form white parentheses along the terminator. Named for a chain of mountains which form the backbone of Italy, the lunar version is about 370 miles long, with peaks that reach about 3 miles in height. Apollo 15 landed in the valley just west of the Swan Ridge, the top of this mountain chain. These mountains are visible in images captured by astronauts David Scott and James Irwin during their 3-day stay, which included the first use of the lunar roving vehicle. On Thursday night, look for the 36-mile-wide Eratosthenes crater at the southern end of the mountain chain. On Friday night, the 57-mile-wide Copernicus crater near the moon's equator is highlighted. The rims of these two equators are more than 2 miles deep, and that provides shadows during that last quarter, making them very easy to pick out. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, cold weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink, by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
Before I do the weather roundup here, I want to do a quick plug. Remember our friends from Storm Front Freaks, the podcast? I will be on their show this week. So we're recording it Thursday evening. So we'll be over there doing their show. So let's talk about weather around the fruited plain here. Let's start with Kim in Oklahoma. Kim, hot
and muggy, terrible. I do have to say it was pretty funny this morning. Well, funny for me sitting in the weather center where everything was fine. But on main campus, we have a building called Sarkey's Energy Center, and that's where the geography program is housed. They didn't have air conditioning today. So while it was well over, it was 100 degrees and with 70s dew points, it was awful. The Energy Center was not doing particularly well on energy. I guess that happened in a couple different places today, but when things get this hot for this long, stuff starts to break. And I'd
like for the air conditioning to work well the next couple of days at the Weather Center. I'm going to need that.
Yeah. We are fortunately doing okay so far in the Weather Center, but I wouldn't put it past us to break something. It gets that things
break
there.
the microwave or the hand dryer or something in the bathroom, but the air conditioning needs to stay working. Thank you.
Well, that's one of those excessive heat warnings, Kim. That's not pretty.
No, and it's the moisture is really driving that. It's extraordinarily unpleasant. You can't be outside for that long without anybody feeling pretty bad. So yeah, we're just excited for this to be over.
So let's work our way down to Troy in Austin. Troy, how hot?
Another pleasant day in Austin. 103 at Camp Mabry at one of our first order sites, and 101 out at Austin Bergstrom International Airport. And right now, about 89.7, few at 75 and few at 25,000. So it's mostly clear tonight, but our lows the last couple of days at Camp Mabry have been at 80. And at least a couple of the days we've actually set brand new record high lows for the date. And keep in mind, Camp Mabry, that goes back to 1895. That site, that climate site, is back to 1895. So this has it's just unpleasant.
I felt like I was listening to Clear Channel Radio, KTROY from Austin, Texas.
There you go, buddy. Yeah.
Troy, Troy, all the hits. Our group does the weather on a radio station down in the Lower Valley in McAllen, and I can't recall the last time I forecast a day under 100.
Yeah.
I think
I was there for their first day of 100 degrees earlier this year.
It's your fault.
Yeah,
that's your fault, totally, Nate. So anyway,
but keep in mind, James, that back in late July, that cold front went completely through Texas, and we had record chill in the state for the latter part of July. Lasted about a day and a half, but looks like the ridge of high pressure may begin to weaken a little bit over Texas by the end of the week and into the weekend, and maybe take the edge off the temperatures. We'll see if it brings any rain.
Awesome. We should mention that Aubrey is not on the show this week. Aubrey is apparently doing Dancing with the Stars, a local Dancing with the Stars in her market. So she's tied up dancing this evening. And Kevin Selly, I don't know, it's probably 50-cent beer night at Hooters, and that's the reason he's not.
he's binging hacker documentaries off Netflix.
So, let's kind of work our way to the east. And Bill Murray and Birmingham had some.
Well, we a rain force field right over our house today, the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and I was watching all those, those beautiful outflow boundaries today, James. I know you were watching them too, and I was pulling for that one that was coming over us to dump, and it did. It just dumped about 5 miles downwind over Bluff Park and Hoover, and we came up with 500, so we didn't do too well.
We were hammered at our house. We had some trees down in the neighborhood, strong winds, no power. These things can pack a punch when they come through, but you're right, it's fever famine with these air mass storms. We had flash flooding in some communities, and many places had absolutely nothing, and we'll deal with that for a while. So let's kind of work our way up north. Dr. John Scala, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, fine place to be on an August day.
Oh yeah, the manure is nice and fresh. And
that's just on this show.
I can tell you stories, Bill. 76-degree dew point yesterday. We're looking for that amplifying trough here by the end of the week that will bring us some relief. I've been looking at some of the heights out of Alaska. Have you guys paid attention to some of these numbers? There's a launch site, Cold Bay, Alaska, I think it is.
Yeah.
588 decameter height at 500 yesterday.
Oh, really?
That's astounding.
Like Nashville, Tennessee, right there.
That's astounding. So we're looking forward to some reprieve as well.
Well, John, the stuff in Alaska, I mean, they're burning. Up north on the Parks Highway, this big fire up toward Talkeetna up north has been huge from what I'm able to tell, and just unreasonably dry up there lately as well.
Yeah, that's a big aspect of their area forecast discussions.
Yep.
Let's work our way down to Nate in North Carolina. Looks like you had some air mass storms yourself there, huh?
We did, and in honor of today's show topic.
Altimeter 3009er. Remarks. Density altitude 1,300.
It's the ASOS from
International Airport.
RDU from just now. It's hot. It's humid. It's going to be hot and humid. And my pick of the week, I'm gonna jump the queue here because I feel like the last few weeks, the models and the forecasters and the CPC all been hinting at a cool down at like 7 to 10 days, and it never seems to materialize. And so my pick of the week is my pick of the week is a clip from the Rick Mercer Reports show from Canada, sort of the flip side of this, called Plus One. It's a cute little couple of minute clip about giving you hope so that you don't go to dark places and cause property damage because it's so blooming uncomfortable outside.
So here, and let's see, Matt, where are you physically located? I'm sorry, I've been tied up with these storms here. Are you in Jacksonville?
No, so my National Guard unit's down in Jacksonville. I live in Noonan, Georgia, which is southwest of Atlanta near Peachtree City. But I'm actually physically at Lake Hartwell, which is at the Georgia-South Carolina border if you're running up I-85.
Right.
And we had some pretty intense air mass thunderstorms.
Air mass thunderstorms, yeah.
Yeah, we had a severe thunderstorm sitting on top of us for about 30 minutes. We probably had 30, 35 knots, I use knots all the time nowadays. So I guess it was about 40 mile per hour wind gust, and we probably had about 1.5 inches of rain in about an hour here.
So here's the big question, and let's make Matt answer this. What do you say?
Yeah.
When does the Atlantic Basin wake up? When does hurricane season?
September the 9th.
September the 9th. That's the easy answer.
Right at the beginning of the NWA annual meeting. That's exactly what
So one of the things that I do with my National Guard unit, down in Florida, we are hurricane response for the state of Florida when it comes to weather. We are, kind of the weather people for military support there. So we've always got eyes on the tropics, and I was analyzing kind of where that Bermuda Azores high was, and that high was pretty far to the east. And I know that La Nina is kind of winding down, or it's not as strong, going to be as prevalent as they thought it was, 3-4 months ago. I think that we're going to have to wait probably to mid-September, and then we're going to get just kind of a trail of storms, 2-3 at a time, like we have in years past. But I think we have about another month before things really kick off.
And the next question: where do they recurve into the westerlies? Ooh, nobody knows. We'll find out.
Depends on that Bermuda Azores high.
I think Florida might be targeted this season.
Ooh.
I knew somebody would come out with a bold pick. There you go, Florida. Look out!
It's been Florida the last 3 years because I've been down in Florida a lot for hurricanes. I think that it might be time for the East Coast to get a little something.
No, we had ours. We had ours last year. We're done. No more. 2 hours inland, and I had a tree on my roof. I don't need that.
So I just found out I'm the lead in here, so I got to run. So Bill, you do picks of the week and wrap her up. Show belongs to you.
Outstanding. Thank you, James. Well, so I warned you about picks of the week this week, so be ready for that when it comes around here, Matt. Kim, we'll start with you over on the right side of the Hollywood Squares here, at least on my screen. What's your pick of the week?
Yeah, so based on our conversation today, this very excellent conversation, by the way, Matt, this has been extremely enjoyable, and everybody's asked such good questions. I was inspired to put forward a little bit of my, I've left my science policy and policy for science had an link to the office from the FAA for human factors research. It turns out that the FAA, before they put anything into practice that has to do with their aviation controls, any system of any kind, it has to go through human factors research process. So they don't come up with the technology, think that it might help their folks and just deploy it. They have to actually ascertain what the effects will be on their judgments. As you've listened to Matt tonight, you've probably noticed that he's really efficient in how he describes things and how you've categorically arranged your knowledge. And that turns out to be extremely valuable skill in aviation. You have to do a lot of things under time pressure. So every single second and every single task is meted out in aviation. And so they're incredibly inspiring to me in that they have this very robust behavioral science unit dedicated to the craft. And if we could think that way for what we're doing and deploying products to other users from the Weather Service, if we're thinking that way about deploying to our broadcasters and our emergency managers, and ultimately in service to the public, I think it would get us pretty far.
Outstanding, Kim. Thank you so much. Nate Johnson, there in the middle in the Paul Lynn Square.
Yep.
Uh-oh.
Muted.
He's probably doing the news. He's in the middle of a newscast. That's what it is.
Almost got into another. Anyway, +1.
Okay.
My pick of the week. That video clip I talked about.
Okay. I thought that was code for something. All right. All right.
It's
good.
code for it's too hot.
Outstanding. I would second that. Dr. John Scala, what's your pick of the week?
Bill, I know we talked about Hurricane Camille last week, but I came across a supplement to the reanalysis of Hurricane Camille paper published back in 2016. This is a reconstructed WSR 57 loop of Camille at landfall. Yeah. This is spectacular. I've been watching this today, just staring at it. The eye was so tight on this hurricane. So anyway,
that is amazing.
The link will take you to the loop, and I'm sure you'll be mesmerized.
Yeah, I was mesmerized for several minutes today. Thank you for the time suck of the day there, Dr. Scala. That was perfect. You need to share those earlier in the day so I can lose more time. That would be even better. But thank you for being here tonight. So good to see you. Yeah, you've got one of my favorite things. We've been talking about planes all night, but the most beautiful steam train in America is going to be coming up through your territory tomorrow, I think. Norfolk Western 611 steam engine will be going to Strasbourg.
Oh, yeah, that's a fantastic place.
And so if you're up in that neck of the woods and you've had it up to here with all this airline talk tonight, go back to a different century and see my beautiful J-class locomotive there. That's going to be a lot of fun. Wish I were up there to see it. So.
That's a wonderful place, Bill.
Yeah, I see it on my little webcam or my rail cam every day, and it's just it really does look like an awesome place.
20 minutes from my house.
All right, that's vacation next summer. So, thank you, Troy Kimmel. I know you got a pick of the week, and then I want you to ask me about WeatherFest.
Okay, my pick of the week, and we've probably done this before, but I want to give a big holler, a shout out to Wes down at the University of South Alabama. And a lot of y'all are familiar with the old DIFAX charts, the constant height charts that, even Matt was talking about tonight that used to be put out on the DIFAX, the NAFAX circuits. And the government quit doing those a while back. And apparently, I understand from Wes down there, they basically asked the U.S. government to be able to have the program that did that. And they're still running those things at the University of South Alabama. And they're available online. There's an 850, 700, 500, 300, and 200 constant height chart available. They're PNGs, but you can link directly to them. There are actually a 5 pick of the weeks this week, but really pretty neat stuff if you like those charts, which I always have. Dr. John. So those are really cool charts to have, and I just like to have access to it. And speaking of that, we need to talk about what's going to happen up in Alabama in a few weeks, in North Alabama, and Huntsville, Alabama, with the National Weather Association, and how all of our listeners, all of our viewers can come and meet us all, which I don't know why they'd want to do that, but they have the opportunity to do that. Right, Bill?
Yes, they will. Saturday, September 7th from 10 to 4. At least several of us will be there. James will be there at least from 10 to 12 that day signing his book. Troy, you're going to be there?
I'm not going to be there Saturday, but I arrive on Sunday. I might point out on Delta Airlines.
There you go. The only way to get to Huntsville.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great meeting and a good chance to see everybody.
Yeah, we've got a huge public-facing weather Ready Fest on Saturday the 7th from 10 to 4 at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. We've got 35 exhibitors, a ton of large vehicles. We've got 10 speakers. We've got 4 stage shows. It's going to be a phenomenal day. We've got National Weather Service Skywarn training. There's never been tours of the National Weather Service in Huntsville. This will be the first time that's ever happened. Come get a golden ticket for that. We'll have tours of the Swirl Center. We'll have all of their equipment, their MIPS, their radar, all of those things. Everybody's getting excited about it. Bring the entire family. It's free. Go to weatherreadyfest.com, get a free timed ticket. You just enter anytime during that hour and come win some cool prizes and get a real cool takeaway. We've got a passport with tons of severe weather and other hazardous weather safety information, and we'll have a lot of fun and learn a lot all at the same time. So that's going to be my pick of the week, Troy.
All right.
I've subscribed to like 11 aviation podcasts after all this talk tonight. So
what a great show, Matt. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, Matt.
It's been a pleasure.
So give us a pick of the week, Matt. Did you have time to come up with one?
I was going to come up with one and I changed it. My pick of the week is Sir Isaac Newton and gravity. What goes up must come down, and usually with an equal force. My nose.
Wow.
I was gonna say what goes up must come down, ideally following a stabilized approach and a smooth flare a few feet above the runway.
Thanks.
I had my landing gear was my face.
Yes.
In aviation meteorology, our professor used to say, takeoffs are optional, landings are mandatory. That fit your situation as well.
That's absolutely true.
So you were like Delta Flight 414 that suffered damage on landing in Ponta Delgada earlier today, huh? to its landing gear. Well, that's outstanding. Anybody else want to add anything for before Matt before we go?
No, we're good. Great.
We covered it all. It was outstanding. Thanks for setting us up.
Thanks for having me.
Matt, thanks for being here. You're welcome back anytime. We'd love to have you. All right. Well, WeatherBrains is the weekly netcast. It's all about weather. Next week, we're going to be talking about what, Kim?
We're going to be talking about mobile
weather.
homes. Weather.
Very
Weather.
good.
We'll talk about that. We'll be talking about it. Great. You should show up. Also, people who live in mobile homes dealing with weather. It's going to be good.
And that was interesting because when Greg was talking about the threats in motion and the more equitable lead times, I think that was a factor in Lee County this year in our tornado.
That'll be one of his example cases. It's one of those times where it's not that the forecast did anything incorrectly or badly. It's that there was some piecing together of warning polygons, and it just so happened that the folks in Lee County were at the early stages of their polygon when the warning was issued, when the tornado hit. So he'll provide an overview of what the world could be like for that kind of event, for that specific event too, in the threats in motion case. It's a really compelling illustration he'll give.
Well, until next Monday night when we talk about that extremely important subject, we will just wish you a very good week. And as I always tell you, keep an eye to the sky because you'll always have something fun to look at. And good night, everybody.
Good night.
Matt, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.
And there's still people here. Hey, great show tonight. Thank you guys for listening and watching. I got to go finish this newscast in here. So we'll see you all next Monday night, 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern. Y'all have a great week. God bless, and see you.